Welcome back here at Huis vir Afrikaanse Poesie in Capital Park. Today I'm having tea with Dikiledi Dithabo, which is also one of our female councillors in the city of Tshwane. And as you might have seen, those who have watched our various teas, that we've got a number of groundbreaking women in the DA. Women who has often rised to the call, and a woman who at times just decided, I'm going to do what needs to be done to groundbreak for either the people around me or the female generations to come. So Dikiledi has spent her life helping people stand up for themselves. I don't get shy. I see how you are trying to look away, but I mean it's the truth. Let's start with your time at Babelegi, which was basically the time when you started realizing that you need to be the voice for others. When you were at Babelegi, what was it that made you decide that even though you wouldn't be able to form part of a union because of the position that you had, you wanted to assist others to unionize in order to better their working conditions?
Thank you very much, Jacqui, and thanks for the opportunity. Let me start by saying that my career was first of that one being an educator, but I left that because I saw that teaching is not my line, and I took another faculty, the industrial relations. After completing the industrial relations, I got a job in Babelegi, as you have mentioned, and I started as an administrator. Then as an administrator, I could see that the conditions for the workers in the factory were not conducive. Starting by in the morning, when buses drop the employees off the gates, then those employees will stand outside the fence in winter, in rainy days, and they will wait for their time to come in. That was a very terrible situation for human beings. Then, as the administrator, I could see that that is not right. Then, the other thing that didn't sit well with me was that it was inside the factory itself, whereby there was a division between whites and blacks. During that time, there was still a situation where we find toilets for Bantus. We were called Bantus by then, Bantu vrouwens, Bantu mans, and slegs vir blankes. And that thing also didn't sit well with me. That's something that compelled me to say, but what can be done to correct the situation? Then I did my research, Jacqui, as the administrator, then to say, how do we change the lives of these employees? Then I did my research and I found out that there are unions that people may join. Then I was working for a sock factory. Then I contacted unionists in the SAC 2 division. And then the unionists came and then addressed some of the supervisors. I arranged a meeting, a secret meeting. Then the unionists came, addressed the supervisors. Then they were called supervisors, but they did not have rights. They did not have a voice that can be heard. Then I assisted them. Then they started completing forms. I even assisted them to reproduce the forms that they had to fill. I was not allowed to be part of the union. Then they completed the forms, and then they became the union members. Then, but I was the one who took the forms to senior management, because they had to be on the roll of the union, and then we had to deduct a sum of money from them to be members of the union. Yeah, but that was the last stage. The first stage was for employees to complete the forms. Then the unions came in and the situation changed. Those boards for Bantu Vrouwens, Bantu Mans were removed. The cafeteria became for everyone, not only for blacks. And then the dining hall, well, it was for senior management, of which I was part of senior management. That's how I changed the lives in people, the lives of people in Babelegi. And then another thing, they started having benches in their cafeteria, whereby during lunchtime they will go and sit on their benches and eat. And then the management also brought some few microwaves so that they can heat their lunch boxes. That was something that I brought to them. And then again, we also had a situation where we'll give ladies the sanitary towels. I went to management to say, but what happens to these women? Because we know women will have their dates. Then what are we doing with these women? Because I could see that when I go to when we go to the toilets, you'll find that someone did not have sanitary towels, and then they'll end up using the socks. And if I use a sock that has been manufactured here, it may cause infection. Then I went to management because I was the mouthpiece of them. Then we started ordering sanitary towels for women. That's something that I also managed to change. And we also got some medication. The company started ordering some medicines for them. If someone has got a headache and then if it's not serious, we'll give them Panados, something like that. Unless it is something that it was not for us to deal with, we'll send them to the clinic. That's how I changed the lives of those employees. Even today, when they meet me, they say, yo, but hey, Maditabo, you once helped us during that era in the company.
Now, from the entire story, it was the inequalities, that made you realize that you need to step in and you need to change. And we'll get to your political career later on, where you took this fight further. However, from the first time that you and I started working together, and closely we started working together in 2016 when we served on the IDP committee together. And from the first time when you and I closely started working together, I never felt that, although your entire drive to activism started because of the inequalities between black and white, I never felt there to be a divide between you and I. I never felt you to be, to have a grudging feeling towards me because of my skin color. How did you overcome that? Because seeing the things that you saw, and obviously living the things, and this is something that's part of South Africa's history, that our black people lived through horrors. But how did you come through that, sitting on this couch and not feeling a divide, seeing me sitting here as a white woman, even though that was the specific thing that caused you to stand up and to say, here, we're going to stand up for our rights?
Okay, thanks, Jacqui. Thanks. If you feel that you felt great being around me, yeah. So I think that thing, Jacqui, it was built in me. Like I said to you, as I was part of management, I was allowed to have lunch in the dining hall with the other senior management, of which mostly they were whites. That's when I learned the culture of saying that, but there is no difference between me and Brechi. There is no difference between me and Magda. Then we are the same. That's something that grew inside me. And that is why, even when I left the industrial area, and then in the township that I am now, then I started bringing people together to say, but we need to stand up for ourselves. Women, we have to stand up for ourselves. We don't have to wait for someone to do something for us. Then I started grouping women together, and then for them to form their cooperatives to do things on their own so that they can feed their families. Don't just say, I'm waiting for my husband to come back by the end of the month. You must also do something here. Have a backyard garden. Grow some vegetables so that at the end of the day you are able to feed your family. Then that is something that pushed me to become an activist and be most active in the area. Then I joined the civic movements, and then people started knowing Dikiledi Dithabo. And then that's something that led me to politics, to real politics now.
So real equality and standing up for yourself is part of the core of who you are. And that is, also teaching others then on
to
how
do
to
the
say.
same, yes.
You started your political career in the ANC.
Yes, that
you
is
were
correct.
an ANC
ANC
councillor.
cadre, yes.
Yes, and you were a voice in council then for the area where you're still living now.
Correct.
Okay. And was it hard to then go back to your community and say, I was part of the ANC and now I'm becoming an activist for the DA and I'm running as a councillor for the DA?
A good question, Jacqui. From the civic movements, then I went to politics, then I started with the ANC. As active as I was nominated to become a councillor. I became the ward councillor in Ward 74 for the first term when we were incorporated to be part of the city of Tshwane, when the 13 municipalities were incorporated to form the city of Tshwane. I remember Tshwane before it was the city council of Pretoria. Yes. And Rona, we were the transitional councils. Then I became the ward councillor. And I think by that time everyone was happy to say, but this woman, we know Dikiledi, she's a very good public representative. Then I've completed my first term. Then the second term I became the PR councillor. But as time goes on, I could see that no, the ANC is no longer the ANC that I joined. Then seeing that there was so many things that did not go according to the constitution maybe or according to the policies, then I decided to resign from the ANC. Then I left the ANC, I think it was the end of 2010. Then thereafter, that's when I wanted a new political home with principles and values. That's when I approached one of the councillors in the DA, that is Stanley Rents, and I said, Stanley, here is Maditabo. I'm now following you. I want to become an activist in the DA. And then 2011 to 2015, I was an activist, so that I learned about the policies, values of the DA. Right. Then that's what I did. I became so active in my branch. I recruited members, and all those members of the ANC who were in my ward, who were under my leadership, they also followed me. They joined the DA. That's how the DA in my ward became so strong. Then thereafter, it was 2015, that was when I applied to become a candidate to become a councillor of the Democratic Alliance, representing the same community that I live in with. And people were not angry with me. They were actually happy to say, no, we also saw that there are some loopholes there and there in the ANC, and we are also not happy. Then that's why they followed me. And that's why in Ward 74 we also got votes for the DA.
So you grew up in a rural area?
Yes. Mpumalanga.
Yes.
Dr. J.S. Moroka Municipality.
Do you think that it is your rural roots, or maybe your mother, who was a vice principal at a school, do you think those two things had a contribution in making you want to stand up for other people and want to help other people realize their potential and help them stand up for themselves?
Another good question, Jacqui. You're taking me back and you make me think of my mother. Right. My mother was a very strong woman, and I believe that she has more influence in me. And I think I'm what I am because of my mother. Being a deputy principal in a school, the position that my mother held by that time, and being in a rural area, and then that is a tribal area where we've got the chiefs, right? Then, by that time there were no municipalities.
Yes.
It was just the chiefs, and then my mother was a deputy principal in a school, and she also had this voice. She had advices. My mother was a brilliant person, and having grew up in the rural area, and the conditions there were also not good. Then, what happened in the rural villages, Jacqui, is that meetings will be held in the chief's kraal, where when meetings are called, there will be men will be sitting the other side, women one side. And then what I learned as a young girl was that women were not supposed to speak in those meetings. Only men were allowed to speak in the meetings that were called by the chief. But what I heard one day was that when the chief spoke, and then my mother realized that, but this was not correct. And then all the men were afraid to say, but chief, to stand up and say, but chief, this is not right. How about we do this way? And I was told that my mother stood up and said, chief, you'll pardon me, but I'll have to speak. So my mother spoke. Meanwhile, all the men were afraid to speak. My mother stood up and spoke, said to chief, but you'll pardon me if I'm standing up, because no one is now feeling that he must stand up and say, but chief, how about we do this way? So I want to make a correction. And then all the men, they also felt that it was the thing that they felt inside, but they were afraid to stand up. And my mother made the correction to something that the chief wanted to implement.
Yes.
And then the whole gathering then applauded and said, but this woman is correct. And even the chief himself corrected the situation.
Oh, wow.
And that was my mother. That's why I'm saying my mother was a school teacher, and he was also a person, a brave person who also stood up for her community. And my mother was also made the head, I can say the head man, the foreman in her section now.
Well, look, I believe that we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, and clearly you standing on your mother's shoulders, yes. And as there's a lot of people you've lifted up, and they're standing on your shoulders.
Correct.
And I feel grateful that we've got somebody like you in the DA who can lift people up, and on whose shoulders even I can stand up and grow from. And I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you for your time sitting here and of giving so much of yourself and your knowledge and your past, and standing up when you need to stand up and say, I will lift somebody up onto my shoulders to grow South Africa. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you very much, Jacqui. I didn't realize that I've got broad shoulders.
You've got very broad shoulders.
And thank you very much, and I'm happy I shared everything with you.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with the for the program.
Thank you so
very
much.
much. Okay.
Thanks.